Welcome back to another episode of Exponential Africa, where we are in the beautiful city of Cape Town, and we are fortunate enough to be with Carl Nel to talk about corporate innovation. Carl Nel is Singularity University faculty on corporate innovation. He's the co-founder of Uncommon Partners, which recently got acquired by Singularity University. How lucky. And he is now the EVP of Uncommon Partners at Singularity University and the iLabs. Carl, great to have you on the show.
Thanks so much.
So Carl, do you want to tell us about what is your new role as EVP at Singularity University?
So it kind of is a nice segue from my previous work at Lowe's and other companies. When I left Lowe's, we started a new company to help other companies transform. And as we were doing that, we were also creating new tech and new things having to do with neuroscience and other things. So we're literally just continuing on those same things we were doing, but just tagging into this amazing community here at Singularity.
Amazing. And what in your experience drives this corporate innovation? What's driving all this?
We have to. Everyone should now at least understand that we live in an exponential world, right? And that exponential curve is just getting steeper and steeper and steeper. It doesn't matter what industry you're in, how protected you think you are not. And those that think they're protected very quickly realize how naked they are to all of this change around them. And so every organization needs to change. And most of those organizations that need to change are the corporates. And so they recognize that, they need it, but they don't really know exactly how to do it. And then that's where we come in.
Wow, so interesting. And I mean, how are these exponential technologies going to, change the future of work and spur this gig economy?
Yeah, it already is. I mean, if you look at all of the changes that have already happened, anyone that is using Fiverr, anyone that's using any of these distributed work systems, it's already happening. And so if you have a job that is rudimentary and that is process driven, your job probably won't exist. I'm sorry to all the accountants out there and the paralegals. I mean, those jobs are the first ones that are going to really be automated. There's so much talk about the Uber drivers disappearing, but there's things that'll happen much, much quicker in the white collar space and other things that I don't think the world's really prepared for. So we have to be prepared for the societal ramifications of these things, but also from a corporate standpoint. This honeypot that so many corporates have is going to disappear or dramatically change, no matter what industry you're in. So figuring that out now is much better than when you're really in trouble.
You also look at the neuroscience behind all of this and what's happening in our brains and how do you assist companies with this. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I'm a behavioral scientist by trade that got into all this innovation stuff to see if you could really transform organizations. That was what I cared about. And the fundamental thing, the beautiful thing about neuroscience is I don't really care what you believe about yourself. I really care about what's going on behind the curtain, so to speak, that then we can use as a predictor to be able to see what would drive a behavior change. So for me, it's all about driving a behavior change. Belief is a precursor to behavior change. Ideas are a precursor to behavior change, and so I'm trying to get to that and what's driving it beforehand. And asking people questions has been the only real way that we could understand a little bit what's going on behind here. But now we have these new tools and these new ways to look beyond that and see what's going on, and then use machine learning and use artificial intelligence to be able to extract that and then use that as a predictor. And so we've been doing that in large scale and testing new designs, new store settings, UX, UI, digital interfaces, and other boardroom experiences using neuroscience as a way of understanding and fixing problems that seemed unfixable before. So
interesting. I wanted to ask you, what are some of the biggest misconceptions companies and industries have around innovation?
I think the biggest one is that almost all companies start with a mindset that there's a skills gap. There probably is a skills gap, but that's not the primary problem. The primary problem in all of my research and all of our experience has been there's a story problem. If you don't really have a unified strategic narrative of where your organization is going, hiring some machine learning team is not going to solve your problem. You have to solve the primary problem first, which is what are we doing and what are we becoming? Then you can go about solving the technical problems.
Wow, that's so interesting. So it's all about purpose. It's your massive transformative purpose. It's your marketing within in the organization.
Yes. I mean, there's that classic story, of President Kennedy. It's probably apocryphal, right? But, after he'd done the moonshot speech, years later, he was touring one of these NASA facilities, and as presidents often do, was talking to some guy mopping up the floor. Said, "Sir, what do you do here?" He said, "I'm helping to put a man on the moon." Now, whether that story is true or not, I don't know, But what it exemplifies is that person was tied into the strategic narrative of the organization. Their small role was helping to ladder up to something much bigger. And too often our organizations don't have those things.
Well, just before we go here, I just want to leave the audience with some key takeaways from your book, from Leading Transformation. If you haven't got it already, go get it in one of the bookstores. What are some key takeaways from your book?
Yeah, so from my own experience and then all the research that we did, interviewing Elon Musk and many, many others, and both traditional corporates and the most disruptive companies in the world, there are 3 things that they all do, and if they fall away, it's because they're not doing these 3 things, and when they're successful again, it's these 3 things. There are 3 things. So the first is have a strategic narrative. And this goes back to what we were talking about before. What is it that is really driving your organization to exist and to grow? Every single time humanity, as even in small groups or in larger groups, we have strategic narratives. So it has a high degree of clarity of where we're going and a very low degree of certainty. If you don't have that and your lowest level employee can't communicate it back to you or to their friends, then you're lost. So start there. Second thing is, once you know what you're going to do, then we call it breaking the bottlenecks. Literally map out, like you were going to go to market, map out all the steps inside of your organization that would be required for that to happen. And do it with the ferocity like you were competing against a competitor, and map it out, all of the people you need to influence, all of the official and unofficial things that you have to do, and attack it that way. I never see people do that, which is shocking, because it almost feels I shouldn't be tricking my company. Trick them. Yeah. The third, after all of that, is to have new, what we call future KPIs or FKPIs. You have to have new ways of measuring what is working and not working. And this is where neuroscience comes into play a lot of times. But it doesn't just have to be that. The most critical thing is whatever you're doing to measure your existing business, do not use those measures to measure your new thing. If you go through all of the stories of Kodak, you go through all of these different things, one of the main reasons why they failed was because they were using mature metrics to measure something new. Don't do that. So if you have those 3 things, strategic narrative, breaking bottlenecks, and if you're able to develop new KPIs for the future, that is the recipe for how to break free of all of this inertia inside of large organizations and small ones.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much. It's been a great episode. Hope you enjoyed that. If you liked this episode with Carl, make sure to subscribe and like our page, and we will see you on the next Exponential Africa. Keep smiling.